Sep, how you doing? Welcome to Giant Mess. It's a super sloppy sports and entertainment podcast that's hosted by a giant mess. That's me, the real cinch, Neal Lynch. I'm a former fourth-string college quarterback and middle relief pitcher who earned himself a film and media studies degree. They don't just hand those out. You have to pay a lot of money for those, apparently. Currently, I'm a single dad who likes to talk Giants football, Mets baseball, movies, TV, and comedy. I also like to tell some funny life stories along the way. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Hard Knocks Offseason with the New York Giants. 5 episodes in this series. The first time the Giants have appeared on Hard Knocks. And did we learn more? A lot of stuff we already knew. A lot of the stuff we saw coming. There was some interesting behind the scenes stuff that we'll get into. So without further ado, let us get started up in here. All right. Hard Knocks offseason with the New York Giants. Apparently, the Giants have been one of the few teams, not apparently, it's a fact, Neal. The Giants have not been on Hard Knocks ever. One of very few teams that has never appeared on the program. And they agreed to this, which was a first for the Hard Knocks franchise and for the Giants, where they document the offseason. Apparently, the Giants, according to John Mara, co-owner of the New York Giants, said he preferred this over training camp. And I got to tell you, interesting move that he would prefer this over the training camp. Because in my eyes, the training camp Hard Knocks, while entertaining, I don't know that you really get to see much. Like, it's, there's typically a long shot candidate that you try and root for and get behind. The guys that are cuts, surprise cuts, an injury here or there. Like, it's all well and good. It can be entertaining, but it's like you don't get a ton of insight into decision making and whatnot. So I thought this offseason is a lot more interesting, but it also feels like it's a lot riskier for the organization and for the team, because you're kind of pulling the curtain back. You're letting the other teams see how the sausage is made. And it just feels like a risky proposition. It also could make you look like complete total jackasses. But at the same time, with the dope rhymes that I kick, you and I know, I keep coming up with funky ass shit. It's not the same in that we shoot for a week and then it's out the next week. We shoot for a week and then out the next week, right? The turnaround time on these was much longer, right? So I imagine that the team had a lot more insight and input and was able to review, what was actually going out to the world. So I think they had a lot more control over what was going on, but you also run the risk of coming across a certain way to players that could be interested in joining your team. Of course, the flip side of that is the prospective players down the line might see this and say, oh, this organization knows their shit, or they know what they're doing, and like, I want to be part of the organization. But you also, it just feels like there are more. Believe me, I loved watching the whole thing as a fan. I can't imagine it as a current Giants player watching that. If you're like, if you are someone like an offensive lineman, oh my God, with the Giants who's not named JMS or Andrew Thomas, oh my God. It's just like, woo, that's tough to hear. Even if we all know Daniel Jones is not going to watch it, but if he does catch wind of it, that's got to be tough to hear. So it's, it's a lot of stuff that I don't think normally would ever get back to the players that is now being said about the players. So you wonder, like, even with the stuff that they included, like some of it, you're like, ooh, I wonder how that's going to go over with so and so. There was a lot left on the cutting room floor because there was a lot that they had to deal with that we didn't get to see, which we'll get to. But so we'll start things off. We'll kick things off with episode 1. So this is it's kind of like right after the season ends in January. Giants GM Joe Schoen and the front office staff face big questions going into the offseason, top of which is the status of Saquon Barkley, which was which was pretty much the number one topic in the first 3 or 4 episodes. There's only 5 episodes, so he consumed a lot of the time. Like, what are we going to do with Saquon? What are we going to do with Saquon? This episode had an IMDb rating of 7.8 out of 10. And I thought, yeah, this is a nice little start. Nothing too crazy coming out the gate. But it's interesting to see that it's almost like, I don't know if they were doing this they were being prodded or poked by the producers of the docuseries, being like, hey, we know this is a top storyline, or hey, we know like you have no intention of re-signing Saquon, but can you at least talk about it a lot and make it look like you want to bring him back? Because it just never really seemed like they wanted to make that strong of an effort to bring him back. And judging by what I'll get to in a bit, but judging by what Saquon said in a sit-down interview recently, it's like it was just never, ever, ever like an option to bring him back. So the possibilities or options that they were discussing: franchise tag and stay, which as much as I just don't see that as disrespectful. I just don't. I think it's like, hey, right now, a big contract, we can't work it out, but we want you here. So I don't like this whole respect, disrespect thing drives me fucking nuts, because what the Giants think is disrespectful, Barkley doesn't. What Barkley thinks is disrespectful, the Giants don't. So it's like it's like we need a fucking seminar on respect. Like, because like both of them think that their others, what the other's doing is disrespectful. So it's like, I don't know. Which I guess that explains why the divorce makes, it's just obvious. If they're both they can't even agree on what respect and disrespect is, then it's like irreconcilable differences. I've been there, Saquon. I know what it's about. They could franchise tag him and trade him, which is highly unlikely, because they didn't think that any team would go for that price tag and the pieces, and offering up pieces. And then I think he said something like they were going to offer Saquon $7 million a year or something like that. And so ultimately they decided to let him test the market, which at the time I was like, I mean, I guess if this whole franchise tag thing is considered massive disrespect, or if Saquon views it as massive disrespect, then we want to make sure we try and keep him as happy as possible. Then we won't franchise tag him, and we'll, from the organization standpoint, they're like, we want you to go out there and see what you can get, and then we'll match it. And somehow that's twisted into something else. But so the big question there is, can Daniel be successful without Saquon? And it seemed like the prevailing thought was like, no. Like there were the people that were against, the people that were for bringing Saquon back were like, I don't know that Daniel Jones can be successful without him. And it's true. You look at the numbers, like when Daniel and Saquon are on the field together and everyone's healthy, the Giants win. When one of them is hurt, we don't win as much. When they're on the field together and we're banged up, we don't win. It's that you saw in 2022 when they're both healthy at the top of their game, were pretty formidable. They were thinking without Saquon, he's going to fail, and that this is the ultimate test. And has Saquon masked his shortcomings? Shane said the plan all along was to give Daniel a couple years. Is he our guy for the next 10 years, or do we need to pivot and find somebody else? I mean, judging by what the front office did and a lot of the conversations we saw throughout this series, they don't have a ton of confidence in him being the guy for the next 10 years. And so I think this is Kevin Abrams. I think he's the VP of personnel, maybe, raised doubts about any team being willing to pay Barkley the tag cost of $12 million and give up draft pick, which is half true. There are teams that would pay him $12 million. Unfortunately. Shane expressed his priority of upgrading the offensive line, stated that he didn't want to pay a $12 million running back if they were paying the quarterback $40 million per year, which is an interesting thing to say. I guess when you look around the league, do you see many teams that have that $40 million quarterback and a $12 million running back? And we'll get to whether or not what they did was the right move. Mara wasn't in the meeting, but spoke with Shane separately and countered that they should franchise tag Barkley, which, I don't know. It's tough because at that time, they didn't know Darren Waller was going to retire. And the salary cap was what it was. It wasn't raised or expanded or whatever, increased at that time that they had those conversations. So who knows if Waller retires and the cap news comes out, then do they say, oh, this is no question. We have enough now to franchise tag him and do all the things that we want to do in free agency? I don't know. Shane mentioned his plan to do the right thing and let Barkley hit free agency, hoping he would come back with the Giants could match his market value. I mean, that's, I don't know, the right thing. Mara and McDonald expressed skepticism about letting Barkley walk, but Shane ultimately made the decision. Shane directed the conversation back to Jones and expressed the importance of determining if he was the right quarterback considering his high salary. Again, what a difference a year makes. It was like, I would love to know what the conversations were in 2022, if they had this Hard Knocks offseason after the 2022 season ended, after the playoff loss to the Eagles, like what those it must have been fucking hectic as shit heading into that free agency period, early March, where it's like, I would love to know the thinking and the thought process behind all that. This is where we're first introduced to the idea of bringing in Devin Singletary, motor, as a capable third down back. A question if he would leave the Texans, and we might need to overpay to land him. Interesting. Rossetti also believed there would be a trade market for Barkley if tagged, and noted the Eagles could value him behind their strong offensive line. Interesting. Shane was skeptical of the Eagles spending big on a running back, thinking they would prioritize the defensive backfield. Giants addressed the pass rush with a trade for Brian Burns, the number one wide receiver, needed by taking Malik Nabers with the number 6 pick. Shane, Brown, and McDonald lamented that they were better on every position on defense and some positions on offense in the previous season, but still only won 6 games. Yeah. Dude, you telling me, bro? We on paper, we were so much better in 2023 than we were in 2022, and we still fucking stunk it up. Mostly due to injuries, obviously. Conversation shifted to Jones, with Shane pointing out how the decimated offensive line affected him in a Week 5 loss to the Dolphins. Yeah, I mean, he went up. That was uncensored and raw. Joe Shane unplugged. Like, he just didn't hold back on that one. He was like, yeah, the fucking offensive line stunk. Almost killed a quarterback, broke his neck. We can't have that again. And it's like, imagine that a lot of the Giants players choose not to watch this, but it's hard. I can't imagine being like a Josh Azudu or something like that and having to relive that. Like, your GM is just shitting all over you. Shane alluded to potentially moving on from Jones based on his injury history. Yeah. So planting the seeds of possibly moving on from Daniel Jones. Ugh. Fucking Daniel. So that was episode 1. Episode 2, the New York Giants front office evaluates top prospects of the NFL Combine as general manager Joe Schoen explores potential trades and free agent sightings before the draft. This was an 8.3 out of 10 rating on IMDb. It was clear that Coach Brian Daboll had fell in love with Malik Nabers at first sight. He had his first extended look at Nabers' film during the Combine. Said, I watched that Nabers dude's a baller. And then area scout Scott Hamill said, highly passionate, highly competitive kid, loves football, will train hard, plays with a big-time chip on his shoulder. He's a guy that always wanted the most targets. You'll hear about it if he's not getting the targets. We need to get around this kid and see if we can work with him before there's a lot, because there's a lot to the personality. And holy shit, they weren't lying, because it's now, I'm recording this on August 6th, so it's a full week after the finale. We now have training camp has started. We have now seen Malik Nabers in training camp. And it's like, dude, today he had 18 targets. He caught 17 passes. And caught a ball over a defender and pushed another defender and started a fucking full-on bench clearing brawl, like fight between the Lions and Giants in a preseason training camp practice. He's got the fire and he's got the talent. When Daboll's asked Nabers how he handles not being involved early in games, the LSU star candidly said, pretty tough. Stephon Diggs had a similar personality, and Daboll had a great relationship with the volatile receiver in Buffalo. And while, I guess that's supposed to give me some kind of level of comfort, it's still, like I've said in my draft preview, like I said in my draft review, this guy is sexy as fuck, but also dangerous as hell. Like he's feels like a high risk, high reward. He has the most upside and potential of anyone of the 3 receivers that we were considering with that number 6 pick overall. And he's shown so far that, he's absolutely got the talent. He's blowing everyone away. Rave reviews from everyone that's at the training camp, which, I don't put a lot of stock into a lot of training camp because I just Trey Hawkins is the starting corner. Yeah. Oh, cool. Like just stuff like that. Like, but when you hear, when you see people on camera and the expressions that they give and the reactions and like the sound bites that they're giving, it's like, okay, this guy's fucking for real. So, still Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, how'd that work out? He put up some great seasons. They went to the playoffs a bunch of times. And hey, I'm not too above making the playoffs. I'm not going to spit on the idea of making the playoffs. I would love to make the playoffs repeatedly. Like if I'm a Bills fan, yes, it sucks I didn't get to the Super Bowl, but my God, it's like we're in a, and they could be on now that Diggs is gone and Gabe Davis is gone, and they could be be taking a step back, but feels good while it lasts. At the same time, you didn't get to the Super Bowl, right? You didn't accomplish your mission. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it just takes a toll on a team to have a guy to do that, to make a stink, to be in the news constantly about it, how he's unhappy about lack of targets, blah, blah, blah. Give me the damn ball. We kind of went through that with OBJ. Are we going to go through it again with Nabers? It's like if we win, everyone's happy. It's not a big deal. But then when you lose, and it can just be one loss too. And it's like all of a sudden, so-and-so is unhappy, wants to trade, blah, blah. Assistant General Manager Brandon Brown pointed out to Shane that dominant receivers typically aren't choir boys, quote unquote. Brown noted that his only concern is how the quarterback will handle an outspoken wide receiver. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say Daniel Jones is Eli Manning. But if you remember, when I first started this podcast, Daniel Jones' first season, rookie season, everyone was noting, oh, this guy's like an Eli Manning clone. So in certain regards, we know that as he's played, as it's panned out, he's not exactly an Eli Manning clone, but he has a lot of the same tendencies, mannerisms, demeanor, behavior. So, Eli at one point had to deal with Jeremy Shockey and Amani Toomer fighting in the huddle about who should get the ball. And then he had OBJ, who was like, get me the fucking ball. So Eli, for the most part, I think handled it well, I guess. And I would think that Daniel can do the same. And it's been reported that he really loves Malik Nabers. So that's key. I guess if you, I don't really follow it too closely, but I guess if there had to be some interview with Josh Allen saying like what his relationship with Stephon Diggs is like. Was he able to handle it well? I don't know. I really like this assistant GM, Brandon Brown, though. I think he's a cool dude. Yeah. And I think I'm so glad that they were able. I mean, it's kind of sucks for him because it limits what these organizations do when they want to hold on to you at your current position level. They try to block you or prevent you from going to another team and getting that chance. Does suck for him. It's great for us though, because he just seems like a very knowledgeable guy and a cool dude. So I'm hoping. I mean, it'd be nice to squeeze as much out of him as we can. There were some scouting combine interviews with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy shown during this episode. Of those 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I don't know that you get to see enough to see like, oh, Drake May seems like kind of a goofball. I don't know. I don't remember too much about JJ McCarthy. Caleb Williams, it was like, it's so weird. It was just like not an afterthought, but like, this is just routine. Like, why? I don't even know. I don't know. I guess you get in a room, you talk with them, and if he really blows you out of the water, you're like, all right. Like, what's he gonna say or do in that interview other than, I grew up a Giants fan. I've always wanted to be a Giants player. You need to trade up to get me. Other than that, I don't think that it's worth their time, but I could be wrong. I mean, there was also some guys in the room, Giants or personnel or front office members that were like, I don't know if he would survive in New York with the media. And like, he refused to talk to the media after a loss. Like, that doesn't fly here in New York. So, but then again, I think Caleb Williams is the kind of guy that's just breaking the mold anyway. Like, the paint on the fingernails, like he crying after, it's just, sometimes they're just guys that come along and, they're disruptors. They completely debunk what we all consider to be like, okay, here's what has to happen for you to be like a successful quarterback in the NFL. Joe Schoen didn't think Barkley would have a robust market, so he wanted to let him test it. Chicago was mentioned as a possibility, but not Philadelphia. Insane that just no consideration that Philly was going to be the team. And I mean, to be honest, I didn't think the Eagles were going to go for him. I was right there with everyone else. I thought Chicago was the top team. And I was like, you know what? If he ends up with Chicago, all right. At least he didn't go to Philly. And it's so funny, like Shane telling both Barkley's agent and Barkley directly, I don't know, playing the legacy card and being like, oh, I know Saquon said he wants to be a Giant for life. He can be a Giant for life you know, and he plays a couple more seasons, he can be in the Ring of Honor. And it's like, I just, you just don't see that. It just doesn't work with players anymore. I would say the vast majority of players, I want to put it like a 90%, 95 or higher percent of players in the NFL do not give a fuck about their legacy with a team. They care with their personal legacy. What have I done over the course of my career, regardless of the team that I play for? Did I go to 10 Pro Bowls and did I win 3 Super Bowls and it was with 4 different teams? I don't care about the 4 different teams. I care that I got the 10 Pro Bowls and the 4 All Pros and the 3 it's like, that's why I'm so fucking jealous of what both the Patriots and the Chiefs have done. The Patriots with Tom Brady, the Chiefs with Mahomes, that they were able to keep guys together on that team. And I've said before, I'll say it again, like, Mahomes signs that unreal contract. We're just like, holy fuck. And now we look at it now and we're like, oh, well, that's like, they got like an incredible deal. They got a steal out of that. But it locked them up for life with the Chiefs. And it's like, I don't know, you just don't see it anymore. I mean, Brady was literally not taking top dollar so that the team could build around him. In a lot of ways, I wished to fucking God that Eli followed Brady's example. Can you imagine if Eli was like, you know what? We have an opportunity now after the second Super Bowl. No, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but like, goddamn, if Eli was like, you know what? I'm going to take 75% of what my value or worth is. And I want you to put that 25% towards the offensive line. Oh, fuck, dude. That phone conversation Shane had with Barkley was just awkward as fuck. Just so awkward. And I mean, again, let me see if I can pull up the tweet I had, but I didn't think he did a great job of talking to him on that phone call. I don't think he did a great job talking to Ed Barry, but at least it was a little more engaging and active and whatever. See if I can bring it up. Yeah. So I tweeted, Shane could have handled that conversation way better, but Barkley sounded like he wanted nothing to do with Shane or the Giants. Shane was frustrated by the negotiations in November of 2022, right around what was the trade deadline. So to me, that call felt like a formality to check a box. And then you take a look at the numbers. According to Spot Track, Saquon's market value was 3 years, $30 million, which is an average salary of $10 million, which would have put him 5th among running backs. If reports are true, which I don't know, Shane offered more than that in 2022 and in 2023, and Saquon declined. So Saquon ends up signing with the Eagles for 3 years, $37 million with an average salary of $12.6 million. And so I wrote the cost of losing your legacy equals $7 million, which ultimately it was less than that, which I don't think I have the numbers here. We'll get into the numbers in the next episode that we'll ultimately discuss with the agent. But he basically said to Barkley, go out, see what you can get. Just come back to us before you sign anywhere else and see if we can match it. And Saquon was like, nah. You could tell that. I think I mentioned it in my season review back in January. Good God, it just like every interview with Saquon, every time he talked, it was just like he was over it. He was just like, fuck this city, fuck this team. I'm on to the next thing. I need to get the hell out of here. He could say, you can say you want to be a Giant for life, but you can tell the way you say it, your tone, your body language. I just don't think he want to come back and was probably pretty butthurt about what the negotiations were. My God, what I would pay to learn what those negotiations were like in November of 2022. What was said, what was offered. Fucking A. In this episode, Shane also had preliminary contact with the Patriots regarding the number 3 pick with Patriots executive Elliot Wolf, which was interesting. There were some discussions about defensive tackle Christian Wilkins as a potential free agent target, which is something that I was not tuned into. I that was kind of surprising to me that they were thinking about pursuing Christian Wilkins. As someone who watched the in-season Hard Knocks with the Dolphins, Christian Wilkins seemed like a really cool dude. He seemed really happy with the Dolphins, so it was kind of surprising that he left, because it's like the Dolphins are building something special. They get to the playoffs. Second year in a row they got into the playoffs. It just feels like they're on the upswing, where the Bills are on the decline. The Dolphins feel like they're on the incline. And so with the Bills stumbling, the Jets like kind of in idle mode where it's like everything hinges on Rodgers, who, I don't know that a lot of people have a lot of confidence in him coming off the Achilles. And with the Patriots in the tank, why not stick with the Dolphins and get yourself a division title and another division title? And like, instead you're going to go to the division. He ends up signing with the fucking Raiders. 4 years, $110 million with $27.5 million per year for the Raiders. So, I mean, I get it. Antonio Pierce, after watching Receiver, which I was going to do a full Receiver review of that Receiver docuseries on Netflix, which maybe I'll do after this. We got to see a lot about the Raiders, because they followed Devontae Adams, was one of the receivers that they followed throughout the last season. And yeah, they full on believe in Antonio Pierce, and I can see why. Dude's fucking awesome. And so I assume that Wilkins wants to be part of that squad because he feels like I guess they have a better chance. But and again, you're playing in the same division as Mahomes. It's a tough division. Anyway, weird that can you imagine if we landed him? Oh my God. Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence? Oh shit. I think it was $22 million per year, and he ended up getting $27.5 million a year from the Raiders. There's also very little talk of Xavier McKinney. So, I mean, as much as people want to say like it was Saquon, we never had a chance of bringing back Saquon. It seems like there was even less of a chance to bring back Xavier McKinney. It feels like he wanted out regardless. So that was episode 2. Episode 3 was July 16th, 2024. Amid free agency chaos, Giants GM Joe Schoen loses Saquon Barkley, Xavier McKinney, but bolsters the offensive line and completes a major deal with the Carolina Panthers. This was an 8.1 out of 10. I honestly thought that this should have been probably higher than episode 2, but I understand like episode 3 was, we got to see a lot. So I get it, but like the free agent frenzy period is just so fascinating. So Joe Schoen hops on the phone with Barkley's agent, Ed Berry. Shane asked Berry, in order to get Saquon, what would we have to do? See, this is where I think I have the details wrong, but I think Berry says 3 years, 37.5, which is 12.5 million average, 25 million guaranteed. So Shane calls Mara and explains how he told Berry that if he calls back with those numbers, they can bring it to Barkley that day. They can sign him that day. Mara responds, if I'm going to have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philly, I'll tell you that. I've been around enough players. He's the most popular player you have by far. And yeah, dude, I agree. I mean, I remember the opener, You can go back and listen. The opener against the Titans in 2022. I remember tweeting during the game. I was like, I can completely understand if Saquon doesn't want to play for this team anymore because we have let him down through and through. I mean, we have so let down this guy who should be a goddamn, no doubt, Hall of Famer, all pro, greatest running back in NFL history. He should be, but he's not because he has this fucking organization who does not believe in bolstering the goddamn offensive line. So yeah, 3 years, $37.5 million, $25 million guaranteed. The Giants were willing to sign Saquon for that. So I was wrong. Obviously that I was tweeting after the episode 2. That was immediately after episode 2. It was before episode 3. So in episode 3, we learned that, yeah, Shane offered more than what the value was, according to Spot Track. He ends up signing for 3 years, $37.8 million with Philly, $300,000 more. And I guess there was $26 million guarantee. So it's like you were off by so little. So Mara says, all right. As he turns to head out the office, Shane chimes in, we're going to be fine. Mara says, I think we will be too, and walks out. So, it's a dicey situation, man, because it's like, do you then, after, I don't know, it doesn't feel like Saquon gave the Giants another chance. And for that, I'm telling you, I've said it, when my reaction video to him signing with Philly is up and out there. You can see it. You can watch it. Everyone's saying it's a business move. It's not, dude. It's not a business move. It's a personal move. He did not want to be a New York Giant for life. He did not want to be with the New York Giants anymore. He wanted out of town. And the fact that he picked the fucking Eagles when I'm pretty sure there had to be another, like, they didn't say it, but I'm pretty sure there's another team in the mix there. I would love to know what Chicago's point of view was, but yeah, to be that close to bringing him back and to letting him slip away fucking sucks. Anyway, I had mentioned that Barkley went on Scoop City with Diana Rossini, and he said it was disrespectful for the Giants to say, go out and see what you're worth and bring it back so we can match. Here's an idea, and this is where it's so bizarre to me that this doesn't happen. And I know you're in a position of authority. You don't want to show weakness. Sun Tzu's The Art of War, whatever fucking shit. And this is why I'm probably in the position I'm in. But why can't you just ask the guy, hey, Saquon, here's what we're thinking. Do you want to be franchise tagged? No? Okay, we're not going to franchise tag you. Do you want to be traded? Do you what the fuck do you want? I don't know. So Saquon wanted the Giants to make an offer to him instead of testing the market. So if we went to, which is more disrespectful? I mean, I can't believe Shane said $7 million a year. I mean, I don't know where he's pulling that number from. That just feels a little crazy to me that he said we're going to offer him $7 million a year. Because how do you say that we're going to offer him $7 million a year to then if he comes back to us for 3 years, 12 and a half a year with 25 guaranteed, we'll sign him that day. What? But then not sign him when, so you were willing to go, I'm so fucking flummoxed right now. It's baffling. How do you go from $7 million a year to $12.5 million a year to we're not going to go from 12 and a half to with 25 guaranteed to 12 and a half, 12 point whatever, 26 guaranteed. It's like, it's still fucking so close. So Barkley says it's disrespectful. So if riddle me this, Saquon, if the Giants go to you and say, yeah, we're going to offer you 3 years, $7 million a year, like what? It's less than what you made as a rookie, isn't it? Or just as much as you made in your rookie contract? I don't know, dude. He would have preferred the Giants to make an offer based on what they thought his value was. Giants didn't want to disrespect him with a lowball offer. And there was very little. Barkley says there was very little suspense about returning to the Giants. So it's like it felt like the Giants were more not confident, but were more open to Saquon returning than Saquon was open to returning to the Giants. Again, he did not want to be here. Like if it's that small a difference in the offers, if you liked where you were, wouldn't you stay? I don't know, man. Then we get to see Joe Schoen on the phone saying, "Oh my God," as he learns that Xavier McKinney got nearly $17 million a frickin' year from the Packers, making him the second highest paid safety in the league. I mean, no, I'm not paying Xavier McKinney $17 million a year. What? Why are safeties getting that much money? And we've talked about that. The safeties getting that much money. Like, they sign these big contracts, huge annual values, and then they never play out that contract and they're often traded or whatever, cut. So, I mean, good luck to them. But you look at Landon Collins was a big safety that signed elsewhere. It was like with the Commanders for like, what was it, $10 or $14 million a year? And he didn't play out that contract. We also learned that re-signing Tyrod Taylor was a top priority. Top free agent targets were Tyrod Taylor, Drew Lock, Sam Darnold, and Gardner Minshew. And Dable said, "I would take Tyrod over all those guys." So, Drew Lock, hopefully you're not watching. Regarding Drew Lock, the sale, Shane said that our sale to Drew Lock, our pitch was, hey, we had Trubisky in Buffalo as a backup. He went on and got paid by Pittsburgh. We had Tyrod for 2 years. He went and got a raise with the Jets. And sell the opportunity. Daniel's uncertainty with his health, that situation. And then Mara said, "Walk in here. You're the number one until he comes back." And interesting pitch, because it's like from everything that we've seen, Jones is looking pretty healthy and appears to be on track to start week 1. Knock on wood. But I don't know, because their first preseason game is what, Thursday? And they're thinking about holding Jones out, which makes sense. Why would you? Just hold him out. I would hold him out pretty much the whole preseason. Don't play him in a preseason game until maybe the last preseason game. And really give Drew Lock a healthy amount of work. Have him start and play. I mean, I know they won't do this, but the first half every game. Would they do that? I want them to, but I don't know if they will, because they must think that it's like too risky. Because then if Locke gets hurt, then you have Tommy DeVito starting, which he's started and he's won, so it's not like the hugest loss. But so the free agent targets that the Giants were eyeing were Jermaine Eluemunor, John Runyon Jr., and Robert Hunt, at least as far as the offensive line goes. Hunt was a Dolphins guard who had the highest asking price, and he ended up signing with the Carolina Panthers. 5-year deal, $100 million, $26.5 million signing bonus, $63 million guaranteed, average annual salary of $20 million. So yeah, that was too rich for our blood. But regarding Eluemunor, Director of Pro Scouting Chris Rossetti offers this line: he's going to be our starting right tackle or starting left guard. So that kind of, people are saying, well, that shows that they had no faith in Evan Neal. It's like, it's not that they have no faith in Evan Neal. It's like they weren't sure what Evan Neal's timeline was going to be because of his injury. If he continues to struggle with the injury, gets injured again, Eluemunor's our starting right tackle. And if Evan Neal makes progress and shows that he's healthy, then Eluemunor's our starting left guard. But from everything that we've seen so far in training camp, Eluemunor is the starting right tackle regardless of Evan Neal's healthy. I thought it was funny, like the conversation Shane had with his buddy Dan Morgan, who's the GM of Carolina. "What are we doing, Dan? Why do we need to add on a 7th?" He said on a phone call with Morgan, like, come on, you and I are going to be doing this a long time, hopefully. thought that was funny. It's like, so you guys are just going to like make deals every year? It's just going to be the Giants and Panthers swapping players and picks for the next 15 years. Of course, two friends come to a deal, and Brian Burns ends up in New York in exchange for our 2nd and 5th round picks this year and a 5th rounder next year. We also got a 5th round pick this year, which, I mean, kind of a steal. We, considering, LA offered 2 first rounders for him. Wow. So it's just funny seeing how that kind of how that stuff plays out over the course of months. Because, you go back to like, what was it? Episode 1 with the Senior Bowl. It might have been episode 2, the Senior Bowl, where they connect and they're talking on the field. And, Dan Morgan throws it out there. Like, what do you think, Burns for a blah, blah, blah? And Shane's like, interesting. To go from this little kind of, just throwing it out there, kind of in the wind type conversation to it happening and actually becoming reality was pretty cool to watch. So that's episode 3. Episode 4 premiered on Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. Giants GM Joe Schoen in the front office mull over options for the number 6 overall draft pick, attending pro days, conducting interviews, and exploring trade possibilities. It's got an 8.6 out of 10. And yeah, I would agree. I wasn't so much a fan of that Combine episode. What episode was that? Was that 2? Yeah, that was episode 2. That's probably why it wasn't as high as I would have liked it to be. Or it was, I guess it was pretty high. But a lot of that footage at the Combine was kind of like, meh. I don't know. They made like this big deal about the receiver that like broke the 40-yard dash time. It's like, did he end up being a Giant? No. Gives a shit. So yeah, episode 4, 8.6 out of 10. Was this the highest rated? Other than the finale, I think it might have been. How close did the New York Giants come to trading up to select a quarterback in the 2024 NFL draft? Quote unquote, if we are about to pull this deal off, I'm going to have palpitations. That's the quote from Mara that they ran in all the teasers and the promos. And everyone did a lot of speculating, like what the fuck's about to happen. Mara would go on to say, in this episode, I got to stand by my conviction. That is, if you guys have a conviction on a quarterback, that's what we do. Like 20 years ago, very similar situation. So he's referencing the idea of trading up and giving up a big payload to secure the number 3 pick and the quarterback that everyone is high on. And he was referring to the Giants' famous trade for Eli Manning during the 2004 draft with the Chargers, in which we gave up a considerable amount of draft capital along with Philip Rivers. So Ernie Accorsi, I don't know where I published that article. I don't think I put it on my own personal blog, but I think it was on NFLspinzone.com possibly, or gmenhq.com, but one of the two sites that I used to write for. Someone had released or leaked Ernie Accorsi's notes about Eli Manning, when going to see him play in one of the bowl games. It was not like a prestigious, prominent bowl game, but I think there was a game where he's down by 20. Ole Miss was down by 21, and Eli led him back to a win. Basically saying that because Eli played on an Ole Miss team that was not stacked from a talent perspective, didn't have a great offensive line, didn't have an above average run game, didn't have like crazy good receivers, but yet was still able to win with them and lead them. That is what ultimately spurred Accorsi to pull the trigger on that massive trade. And it's like, that's basically Mara saying to Shane, like, do you have that same feeling about one of these guys? And if you have any hesitation or doubt, then don't do it, And as we learned, the Patriots are really the only potential trade partner to secure a top 3 quarterback. Because as we learn, obviously the Bears are going to go with Caleb Williams with the first pick, and I guess the Commanders were dead set on picking Jaden Daniels at 2. Shane asked his top lieutenants whether they had seen enough to trade up for Daniels or May. Dable said, I would. And Shane said Dennis, referring to assistant director of player personnel Dennis Hickey. Yes. So they both wanted to trade up. No shit, but like, what are you willing to give up? Like, you're willing to give up, like, how much are you willing to give up? And I think that should have been the next question for Shane to them, was like, all right, well, I know you guys are not, like, you got to think of it from my perspective. How much are you willing to sacrifice? How much of our draft capital are you willing to give up and sacrifice to get the guy you want? That should have been the follow-up question. Of course, if he did ask that, they didn't show it, but Shane asked, would you trade up for May? And Mike Kafka said, if you got a guy you believe in, I think you go up and get him. Which, everyone's kind of hinting, yeah, trade up. But then they had this long ass discussion about like the success rate of drafted quarterbacks going back to 2014 and how many remain with their original teams. And it was not pretty. I mean, it's like Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Like, there were, Jesus, I went over all this in when I did the draft, either preview or review, like going back and showing, like, for those people who are unhappy that we selected Saquon number 2 in 2018 and we selected Jones at 6 in 2019, what other options would you have preferred we go with? Josh Rosen? So, like, Mahomes, Allen, and Jackson. Those are the three guys that you missed out on. Meanwhile, how many other quarterbacks were taken in the first round or in the top 5 that didn't pan out? The jury's still out in Baker Mayfield, but I guess that would have been the pick. But you couldn't have picked Baker Mayfield because he went 1 to the fucking Browns. So whatever. Would you have traded up for Baker Mayfield? That's a good question. How much would you give up? It's like, I don't know. So it's funny, like, they're all like, yeah, trade up. And then they had this discussion about how, like, the success rate of drafted quarterbacks at that high position, and you can all see them kind of go like, maybe we shouldn't trade up. Shane, did his due diligence with the Patriots and said, like, okay, is the number 6 pick a first rounder in 25 and something more from 24 going to cut it? Apparently it won't cut it. So what's it going to take? Does it have to include multiple 2025 picks? When Mara walks into Shane's office and asks Mike Groh, the receivers coach, if he were on the clock now and had to pick among these 3 receivers, who would he select? I'd take Nabers. Groh responded without hesitation. Mara is surprised over Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's what we had talked about that leading into the draft, is that even though Marvin Harrison has the pedigree and is like the easy pick, as we came closer to the draft, people had Nabers ranked higher. And, he was the highest ranked or rated receiver in this class. So I liked how they all got together in Shane's office and they were going through potential deals. They could potentially have a deal in place with the Cardinals, with the Chargers, who are 4 and 5. What would that look like? Shane said he would also listen to calls at number 6, but if Nabers or Harrison were still available, they'd turn the card in. What name would be on the card, though, if they're both available? Bears have been in contact about moving up from 6 to 9, to 6 from 9. And Shane said that if that were to happen, there's no way the Bears would select a receiver. And Brock Bowers would be the pick. I don't hate it, but Bowers versus Nabers, I feel like that's a no-brainer. But what would you get back from Chicago? Would you get you wouldn't? I don't think you would get another first rounder. Would you? You'd get another second rounder. And maybe you get the corner that you wanted, which we'll get to. So yeah, Bowers would have been available because he went number 13 to the Raiders. So that would have been interesting. Would you rather have Bowers and an extra, the DB you wanted, and then go offensive line with the other second rounder. So that's episode 4. Episode 5, the finale, was Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. It was an 8.8 out of 10. And yeah, I believe this is the highest rated episode. And it's because it's draft day. You know, a lot going on during the draft. You know, we get to see, you know, while free agency is definitely a crazy period, I don't think there was any real curveballs other than the fact that Robert Hunt was in the mix. Christian Wilkins was in the mix. And again, there might have been a lot more that we just didn't see. And that's what people have to remember about this kind of shit. Is like, this is not a 24/7, as much as HBO or Max presents it in their marketing as like all exclusive insider acts. It's like, nah, there's a lot that's on the cutting room floor they're not showing you. Yeah, actually, I wonder if I can find that here. Is it young? Keep scrolling. Oh. Giants let their prospect color coding for the 2024 draft class leak in the final episode of Hard Knocks. Interesting who they tagged with the codes: blue, red, purple, pink, gray, and yellow. And so the speculation is that blue is the code for all-around good leader, teammate, person. Red is medical concerns. Purple is character concerns. Pink is undersized measurement concern. Gray is multiple positions. Drake May was blue. Marvin Harrison is blue. Alt was blue. Adunze was blue. Bowers was blue. I don't know who Murphy is. He was blue. So interesting that they had Kool-Aid, McKinstry, the corner that they had wanted, they had medical concerns about. They had medical concerns with Cooper DeJean, who went to the Eagles. Tyler Nubin they had as a blue. Malik Nabers, not blue. Kind of interesting. But then again, doesn't look like he had a purple either. He's just white. Like the majority of the guys on the board, he was just in white. So I guess they did not have character concerns about Nabers. They don't think he's undersized, obviously. So, okay. Interesting. So after the Chargers took Alt, first call came from Indianapolis Colts GM Chris Ballard, who offered their pick at number 15, their number 46 pick, as well as next year's second rounder for the 6th. Shane said he didn't want to move back to the 15th, which, I mean, 15, who is still available? Some offensive linemen. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that any names really jump out at me. So yeah, I guess it makes sense to stay where he was, because 15 is just too low. He wouldn't have had Bowers. McCarthy's off the board. Adunze's off the board. Penix is off the board. Nix. Yeah, so at the time I was like, he doesn't want to fall to 15th, but yeah, after seeing how it panned out, he made the right choice. He got a call from Jets GM Joe Douglas, but we don't know what was offered. It's funny when Shane's talking about Nabers too. He's like, considering how much all these guys are making on the free agent market, referring to wide receivers, it's good we were able to get Nabers. It's almost like it feels like it's a foregone conclusion that we're only going to have Nabers for 4 years, maybe 5. It's just like I'm just resigned to the fact that we're not gonna re-sign him when his contract's up, because he's gonna ask for, like, by the time that happens, Jesus Christ. I mean, if fucking who's the highest paid receiver? I mean, I just watched Receivers on Netflix. I should know this. It was Ramon St. Brown and Justin Jefferson. both got massive contracts. So St. Brown got 4 years, $120 million, $77 million guaranteed, an average annual salary of $30 million. And I think Justin Jefferson was more. They were both within this like a very close time period. 4 years, $140 million, $35 million per year, $36 million signing bonus, 88 guaranteed at signing. Jesus Christ. He's only 25. So by the time Nabers is a free agent, he could command, I mean, Jesus. If we're already at 35 million a year, it could be damn near 50 million a year or more by the time he's a free agent. I just can't see us paying that. But it'd be interesting, like in an alternate universe, if like Gettleman is not the GM and Shane's the GM and OBJ, like if Shane was here when OBJ, that whole OBJ situation went down, we're not going to sign him just to trade him. No, we traded him. I wonder how that all would have panned out. Anyway, yeah, they showed a clip of Dable with Nabers at camp, and Dable taps Nabers on the helmet and says, "I'm glad you're here, buddy. You're going to be a damn good player." So there were 2 targets at 40. What's interesting about the Nabers pick, and this gives me it's I'm not on high alert, but it definitely, I feel off about it. I remember in the pre-draft interviews, maybe it was a combine interview with the press, what do you think about the Giants? He's like, his answer wasn't like that crazy passionate or like hopeful or excited, or didn't seem like he was too happy about it. And then even here, when he gets the call from Shane and after he hangs up with Shane, first of all, the call of Shane, it's just like, he didn't sound too crazy. He gets off the call with Shane, and then his family or his friends are asking him, who was it? And he kind of just unenthusiastically says, "I'm going to New York." So it's like, I don't know. But then you see him celebrating with his family and friends, and they're going nuts. He's wearing the Giants hat. He's all smiles when he's on the FaceTime with the whole war room, Who knows? It's just, I get these little weird spidey sense about, like, I just really don't think he wants to be with the Giants. And it feels like if things go sideways, I don't know if it's going to be a Kadarius Toney situation where we trade him in year 2. But it's like, if we don't win, I don't know. If he puts up big numbers and stays healthy, I think he stays all 4 or 5 years. But if it's a Kadarius Toney situation where he's like hurt or losing, it's like I can very easily see him like wanting out and making a stink, and then the Giants have to cave in. Sucks. There were 2 targets at number 47 with the 47th pick. As I mentioned, Alabama's Kool-Aid McKinstry and Georgia's Kamari Lassiter. They're both off the board by the time the Giants got their pick. I think they went off at 41, and what was the other one? I forget. And they said that they did not want to trade up to get them because they only had 6 picks, which I don't know. If for a second round, top of the second round pick, how much would you have to give up? I don't know. I need to get the draft value card to see how much they would have to give up. But like, to get the corner that you want, and you look at what happened, and it's like, okay, they ended up going with Tyler Nubin. Shane highlighted Nubin's ability to take away the ball. And on draft night, DC Shane Bowen told Shane that Nubin was his number one player on the board and can contribute year 1. And then you look at the unofficial depth chart that just came out recently, and it's like he's backing up Belton, which there's a couple ways you can look at that. You can say like, oh, well, Belton maybe has taken strides, and he's assumed the mantle, and he's ready to step in and ready to start, and he's overcome a lot of the things that maybe didn't allow him to get a lot more playing time in his rookie year. But maybe it also indicates that Nubin isn't at the level that they thought he would be. I don't know. I haven't heard much about Nubin. All I know is Drew Phillips is slotted as the starting slot corner. And Darnay Holmes is like the outside backup corner. Interesting. Shane talked about Drew Phillips with Shane Bowen and defensive passing game coordinator, DB coach Jerome Henderson. Where are we now? Obviously, you see the big drop off to the corners, but the nickels, Phillips is a 3-down nickel for you guys? And the coaches said yes. Dable asking Drew Phillips in a meeting with what his number one trait as a football player is. It's my toughness. I ain't scared of nobody on that field. So very interesting. I mean, it's like Newman's the second round pick, but we've heard more about Drew Phillips. And I mean, if the unofficial depth charts is able to speak, that kind of confirms it, that Drew Phillips is the better of the two thus far. But we'll see. Things change, obviously. And then the 4th round pick, Theo Johnson, Penn State tight end. Shane was relaying a text conversation he had with someone, we don't know who said that Theo Johnson equals straight dog. Had him at the Senior Bowl, never turned down a rep at practice. He's got an edge to him, respectful, but ain't afraid to scrap. So that's now 2 guys. Well, I guess 3 guys. We don't really know about Newman, but like Nabers, Johnson, Phillips. Those are 3 guys who have been associated with being dogs. Tough, tenacious, physical, which is what we've been kind of we've been lacking it the past decade plus, where it's like scrappy, fight, grit. And then with regards to the 5th round pick, Tyrone Tracy Jr., little insight from my favorite assistant GM, Brandon Brown, said, I knew there would be an opportunity for Tyrone Tracy. His perceived flaws were that he was an older prospect, not a lot of time in the running back room. We flipped it and looked at it. The positive, he's a former receiver that can help the passing game. He can play all 3 downs. He had a strong all-star game. He's wired the right way. The coaches raved about him. And then our analytics department said he has explosive play per touch, ranked up there toward the top of all the running backs in the draft. So that could be interesting to follow and watch. Although I saw an article from The Athletic that was talking about Dante Miller, aka Turbo, is like the guy that's been opening eyes throughout camp. So that was the finale. We didn't get to see, we got to see them kind of run around in shorts and, just helmets a little bit towards the end on the field. And it looked like they were pretty pleased with what they got. Not a whole lot about the linebacker that they picked up from UCLA. Macau. I know how to pronounce it now. Thank you, YouTube. So final overall takeaways. This is from Dan Duggan of The Athletic. It was disconcerting to hear Shane talk about how the Giants need to figure out if quarterback Daniel Jones is the guy after giving him a contract with $82 million guaranteed a year ago. Even if Shane is trying to sell hope that Jones still can be the Giants quarterback for the next 10 years, it's obvious the conviction the GM expressed a year ago has evaporated. Ugh. Shane's emphasis on upgrading the offensive line this offseason demonstrated how badly he miscalculated last year. Coming off a playoff season, Shane's only investment into the offensive line was a second-round center, John Michael Schmitz. Rather than spending on potential upgrades at guard and better tackle depth, Shane dedicated resources to Barkley, tight end Darren Waller, and wide receiver Paris Campbell. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if Dan forgot, but that was not just a concern last season, but this year was that Daniel doesn't have targets. He doesn't have a number 1 wide receiver. And so there was this idea that if we bring in Waller, then he's like wide receiver 1 adjacent, basically. So, yeah, I mean, that Waller trade, not looking great at all. And then the Paris Campbell signing was just woof. So I agree. I'd much rather have an offensive line. I mean, considering, how much film I've seen circulated on social platforms that show wide receivers wide open, but the quarterback doesn't see them because he's got all kinds of men in his grill. Like, how do you come in as the new GM knowing that the previous GM previous two GMs have severely neglected or whiffed on offensive line in the draft and in free agency. How can you look at that and say, okay, we're good with we're Gucci with just JMS? I don't know. So that's a major oversight on his part. And it's like, if he goes out, and here's the other thing. Barkley's departure shines a greater focus on last year's failed negotiations. It's mystifying that they couldn't bridge a small gap of $1 or $2 million in average salary and total guarantees in a 3-year deal last offseason. If the Giants offer the same deal last year that Barkley accepted from the Eagles this offseason, 3 years, $37.8 million, 26 guaranteed, that may have seemed like an overpay for an injury-prone running back, but a year later, it certainly seems like it would have been better to slightly overpay Barkley and use the franchise tag on Jones instead of the opposite route the Giants chose. If the Giants had tagged Jones instead of Barkley, they would have been clear to start fresh at quarterback this offseason without being handcuffed by Jones' nearly $48 million cap hit. The Giants would have Barkley on the books for roughly $12 million against the cap this year, and they could cut him after the season if his performance dipped with a much lower dead money hit than the $22.2 million charge if Jones is cut next year. Ooh, that's hard to argue with. Like, I'm not usually in lockstep with Dan Duggan about a lot of stuff, but in retrospect, yeah. Considering how everything panned out, yeah, dude. Like, it makes a lot more sense to give Barkley the contract and the franchise tag, Daniel. Because, Barkley's been, though they both have had their fair amount of injuries, I would say that Barkley has been significantly more productive than Jones. And even though Jones plays a position that warrants a higher salary, running backs would disagree, I guess. God damn, if they did that. So yeah, I think he bungled that. And at the time, you can go back and watch the video or listen to the episode where I talked about Daniel getting the contract and saying, like, people are like up in arms and like shocked that Jones can command that kind of money. And fucking Jordan Love just got like $50 million a year. He played 8 good games. And he looked really good in those 8 games and, went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. And, I get it, but like $50 million a year based off that small sample is, again, high risk, high reward, I guess. But like, I also just saw Ralph Vacchiano, who used to be with SNY, is now with Fox, just put an article saying like Daniel's contract could look like a steal after this year. It's all dependent on how, listen, so much could happen for the rest. If Barkley comes out and plays like shit and Jones comes out and takes us to the playoffs and wins a playoff game, people are like, we did the right thing. If Jones comes out, shits the bed, and Barkley dominates with the Eagles, then yeah, we made the wrong move. Again, though, you've seen, I don't know if you've seen Daniel's ceiling. I don't think you've seen him. I don't think you've seen his ceiling. I don't think he's peaked. So we haven't seen that yet, but we know that we've seen things from him that are not your status quo, not what an average quarterback would do. So he's shown flashes of greatness, right? And they didn't want to lose that for the hopes of seeing greatness from one of these guys coming out of college. But Daboll wanted Jaden Daniels. So that's why I was curious. I would love to have seen Shane go to Daboll and go, okay, here's what we need to give up to get Jaden Daniels. You still want him? And see what Daboll's reaction is. Daboll would probably still want to get him. It's just like the quarterback is everything. Hey, listen, I was a quarterback. And I get it. But I don't know. Part of me thinks that Daboll doesn't like Daniel Jones. I think he I mean, $22.2 million in dead money if we have to cut him next year. God damn it. But I tell you what, I don't know how, other than him getting hurt, which is a very high possibility, I don't see how he can't succeed in this offense with Malik Nabers. I mean, God damn it. The stuff that's coming out about Nabers, more than a dozen targets, high targets, and like one incompletion. Like, what the fuck? So, what I could foresee is, Daniel's had a history of locking into one receiver, especially a guy that he's comfortable with, and it's burned him. And so I can see that there's a high possibility that could happen this year, where like he's just forcing it to Nabers. And like, we're just in training camp. So it's like, I don't know that teams are really showing a lot. Once we get into the season, especially like division games or against good opponents who have really done their due diligence and it's a meaningful game, I mean, you're going to see double, triple teams on Nabers. And is Daniel going to take advantage of that, or is he going to continue to force feed the ball to Nabers? I mean, I feel like he's a smart quarterback. He's got to know that if all that attention is going to Nabers, there's got to be so many other guys open. And Duggan also points out that Mike Kafka was an interesting character in this series because he was like pretty much non-existent. Like, play calling duties were taken away from him last year. It looks like he's not going to get play calling duties this year. He's promoted to assistant head coach, but he was also prevented from interviewing with the Seahawks for their OC job. Kafka wasn't really ever shown interacting with any of the top offensive draft prospects at the combine or the visits to the facility. So that was interesting. It's like, why are we? Maybe he's like great at game planning, designing plays, but not calling it in-game situation. Interesting. So they obviously value him to a very high level degree, but not enough to let him do play calling because maybe that's not his strength. And I don't know. It's like he's just a strategery guy. He's like, during the week, be like, okay, here's where I see the defense's weaknesses, leading up. Great studier of film and can come up with a game plan, but then can't execute it when the pressure's on in game. I don't know. Little to no mention of Darren Waller's retirement. No mention of Darius Slayton's contract unrest. And our pre-free agency meeting with Russell Wilson, not addressed. So I think people made a bigger deal of the Darius Slayton thing than it needed to be. I think it was never going to be, I don't know. I mean, obviously we can, knowing what happened now, it's like, all right, but I never, I don't know. I was pretty fucking confident that we were going to get something done and he was going to be a Giant. God damn, though, I would love to know what the discussion with Russell Wilson was. Oh my God. Oof. And then the other big news. So that was Hard Knocks. And this came just recently. We signed Greg Van Roten, GVR, right guard from the Oakland Raiders. He obviously has the connection with Carmen Brasillo. He played right next to Illuminor, who is now our starting right tackle. And the belief is that John Runyon then goes to left guard. Yeah, Runyon's at left guard. And the assumption is that GVR will start at right guard. So GVR was ranked 13th of 85 guards in pass blocking efficiency in 2023. He gave up 5 sacks, 3 hits, and 13 pressures, which I think Glowinski did that in like 2 games last year or the year before. And he had 46 pass blocking snaps per pressure, which ranked 8th out of 83 guards with 150 or more pass blocking snaps. So honestly, I think it's a pretty big signing, pretty significant signing. I like it. Obviously, there's detractors. There's, you can pull any number of clips, from a game, from even one game, but much less a season. A guy's going to have one bad snap per game per season. So you put together a highlight reel of 16 bad snaps over the course of a season. You're like, look, he's trash. It's like, shit happens every once in a while, but I think I saw more good than bad in terms of film review on him. There was like one miscommunication where he looked bad, but like ultimately, they handled Dexter Lawrence fairly well when we played them in November. But as it stands right now, GVR is currently the backup to Aaron Stinney at right guard. So Illuminor is listed as the starting right tackle, Runyon the starting left guard. As I mentioned, Drew Phillips is listed as the starting slot. So I guess he beat out Darnay Holmes, who's listed as the backup corner on the outside, backing up Cordell Flott, who's the starting corner. Although reports are now that Nick McLeod is now taking first team snaps. So I think that's the one that's going to be up in the air pretty much the entire friggin' season. I don't think that's ever going to get solved. That's going to be a major, huge hole that I'd be interested to see what Shane Bowen ultimately, how he decides to mask that. The feeling is, at least from my perspective, is that you can pretty much let Deonte Banks, put him on an island, let him lock down on his side of the field or lock up on the number one. And then with the number two, whoever's on him, so you have immense trust in Drew Phillips to keep up with the slot. And then your number two and number three receiver, that's the guy that you're going to have to shade your coverage towards. Like you're going to have your corner on him, but then you're going to have Isaiah Simmons or a safety, a third safety, maybe that is Nubin, who can come in and kind of key on that guy. And then Carl Banks. This was a tweet from Banks on August 1st. He titled it, "The Bowen Effect. I see a different Isaiah Simmons. For the first time, as I have seen in his career, he has a clear, focused, and defined role. He is locked in. His reads are clear, and his movements are free." So that's good. Not listed as a starter, but, I'm hoping he can see more playing time this year because I don't know they got a shit ton of snaps last year. He definitely had some big plays here or there, so he wasn't completely a ghost. But I'd like to see us get more out of him or use him more. So that's good to hear from a guy who has seen his fair share of football, played his fair share of football. I know not everyone agrees with him and all his takes, but I'd like to believe him here as a linebacker speaking about another linebacker. And I'll finish up with the reaction to the fights. I guess there were two fights. Yes, two fights with the Lions because they're practicing with the Lions. The Lions and Giants play their preseason game on Thursday, I guess. First fight was, it was completely Malik Nabers stirring the pot. Who knows? This is the thing. It's a clip, short clip. So who knows what happened outside of that to make Nabers do what he did? Maybe there was a lot of shit talking. Maybe the Lions were like getting under his skin. But basically in the clip, it's like he makes the catch, comes back and like punches the guy in the chest or the face mask, or pushes him, shoves him, and the guy goes off on him. And there's a huge melee. And then people are very excited to see Devin Singletary in the mix there. Wearing number 26. Oh boy. So good to see that he was there to back up his teammate and crew. And so how as a fan, how do you interpret that? Well, okay. There are always fights in camps. So I don't know that we should point to this and say like the Giants are back. Like they're not going to take shit from no one. You can think that. You can say that, sure. And maybe that's a different mentality, especially with a guy like Nabers who said he's not going to take any shit, and from a Drew Phillips who says he's tough, and Theo Johnson who likes to scrap. So it's like if the scrappiness is across the level of the team, and this is happening, then I mean, we had a fight with what was it? 3 years ago, Evan Engram. So I feel like there's a fight in camp every year. So I don't know. That you need to read too much into it. I mean, I guess the second fight was someone was on top of a Giants lineman, and DJ comes over and pushes the guy off, and another fight starts. So, I mean, would you rather that there's a fight and no one comes into the melee and no one backs anyone up? No. But it's very rare that you see that happen, especially in training camp, maybe in the regular season when all when you're on a losing team and all hope is lost. So good to see. Good to see that. I guess there's the fighting spirit, right? And I don't want to call Daniel Jones anymore. He's got the beard now. I like that we can just call him Dan. Hey, Dan Jones, what do you got cooking? So, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. That's the Giants. I think people, it's insane the predictions that are coming out. 4-13. I cannot imagine that. If you ran a simulation 1,000 times, I cannot picture us going 4-13. Even though I know in my initial schedule release reaction, I was like, we're going to win 2 games. It's like seeing how good Nabers is, knowing that we picked up GVR. I have to believe that the offensive line is better than last year. And if the offensive line can just give up like the league average in sacks, I mean, we won 6 games with one of the world's worst offensive lines. If we have a league average offensive line, I'm not even saying like top 10, top 5, league average, 15, 16, 14, around that, I'll take 17. We can win 8 or 9 games and be in the playoff hunt. Is that enough to save? Is that enough to think that you got enough to continue with Dan Jones as your guy? I think if he's healthy and he starts every game, throws for more than 3,000 yards, throws for more than 20 touchdowns, runs for another 5 or 10 touchdowns, another 500 yards. That's the thing. It's like, is he the guy to win the big game? I don't think anyone thinks that right now. But I guess maybe it took last year for him to, the fact that he is in football uniform and practicing and running and throwing, and I understand it's not full contact. I understand he's not taking hits, but people were saying they thought he was going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season, 4 to 6 weeks of the season. So we'll see. But for now, that's all I got. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Big time. You're scrappy. I like that. Physical. You're a dog. We need more dogs. What's coming up? Great question. I will be going down to the Palmetto State. Visit family for a week. I have off that whole week. Much needed vacation. My last vacation didn't go so well. So hoping that this one doesn't end in heartbreak. Probably shouldn't. Hopefully not. So that should be fun. And then might be able to get you one more ep before I head down there. Probably about the finales, all the finales that we had. House of the Dragon, woof. The Acolyte, woof. The Boys, not so woof. I recorded a 3-hour episode reviewing the finale of the Boys season finale. The season. Boys, The Boys season 4. I did 3-hour review and unlistenable. It was you could not. It was from a technical standpoint. It just sounded like there were aliens trying to send encrypted messages throughout the whole thing. That's the best way I can explain it. It was just like a lot of radio interference or something. Some of the evil spirits or something that I must have conjured. In addition to it being like a pretty insane review in terms of like length. You could not listen to it. Your ears would retire, would put in their walking papers. So The Boys, The Acolyte, House of the Dragon, they will not be each 3-hour reviews. I'm looking at I'm going to try and do maybe half an hour each, maybe. And then the next one won't be for another 2 weeks. I don't think. It'll be a pretty much a recap of what went down in SC, Carolina, and then a recap of that lamb roast, golf, life. She's a motherfucker. All right. That's all I got. Adios, muchachos.